Hi everyone, this is Jake from MyLivingWorlds Ants. This is how to raise a queen ant. Welcome to the MyLivingWorlds Ant channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. In this video, I'm going to give you a rundown on how to raise a queen ant. The first thing you will need for an ant colony is a queen ant. The queen is essential to the colony. Without her, there would be no ants. There are two ways of getting a queen ant. The first is to go out and find queens after nuptial flights. You can watch my video on 15 facts about nuptial flights to find out more. Between July to September, you can find queens on the ground after their flights. If the queen has ripped off her wings, she is most likely fertile. Queen ants go through what is known as the founding stage. This is when she will produce her first batch of eggs, which will grow into her first workers. The second option, if you miss nuptial flights or want a different species, you can buy them from an online ant store. Be sure to check out my shop to buy live fertile queens and colonies. Now, onto what you will need. The equipment you will need to catch or keep a queen ant. You'll need a test tube, which can be bought online, and can even be bought in bulk on eBay or Amazon. You'll need some cotton balls, a pipette, some boiled water to remove chlorine, and some tweezers or a cocktail stick, or even a cotton bud, which can remove excess water when adding cotton. This setup will replicate the chamber a queen would raise her colony in. You can quickly make the perfect founding home for your queen by filling the test tube just over halfway, pushing the cotton down until the water absorbs just before the end. This setup will replicate the chamber a queen would raise a colony in. This will supply a fresh source of water. Make sure that the queen in her tube is placed somewhere dark and free of vibrations to avoid stressing out the queen, and do not check on the queen more than twice a week. Stressing out the queen can cause her to stop laying eggs, or even eat her own brood. There are of course other methods of raising a queen ant, instead of test tubes such as acrylic or whitong nests. Stay until the end to find out my new style of a founding setup for 3 of my queens. Researching before keeping ants. It's very important that when deciding to take on ant keeping for the first time, be sure to do some research first. If you're going to raise a queen ant, make sure you know the basics of what conditions they need, such as temperature and humidity, what their diet is, and how often you should check on them. I recommend not more than once a week. Feeding your queen ant. This will all depend on what species you have. If the queen is fully claustral, this means they do not need to be fed until the first workers arrive. They have a store of muscle fluid from where their wings used to be. They break this down and use this to feed their larvae. Then there are semi-claustral queens. These will need access to a foraging area, or will need to be fed regularly throughout their founding stage. If your queen is semi-claustral, you can feed them every 3 days or once a week. A variety of protein and sugar should be supplied. Honey or honey water is a great source of sugar. This will give the queen the energy she needs. When it comes to protein, you can try chopped up mealworms, flies, and other small insects, or even small pieces of cooked chicken. The protein is very important for brood development. Caring for different species, beginner to expert. Whether you're keeping ants for the first time, or you've kept hundreds of ants, it's always good to make sure the species you pick to raise is not out of your depth. For example, I wouldn't expect a beginner to take on ants like leafcutter ants or bullet ants, but starting with species like Lasius niger or Mesobarbarus, and then moving on to species like Myrmica rubra and Pheidole species, as well as many others. There are so many different types of ants, which all require different care. For example, weaver ants need a live plant to bind the leaves to form the outside of their nest, and leafcutter ants collect leaves to grow a fungus, which they live in. Caring for ants can be challenging. When things go wrong, sometimes the queen or workers might not make it, but there are many factors to take into consideration. So if this doesn't go right the first time, don't give up. What to do when first workers arrive. So, after keeping your queen ant for several months, anywhere between 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the species, you can expect the first workers to emerge. When this happens, I recommend feeding them a lot, as the queen will be exhausted from lots of hard work, and the workers can finally take over. If you're keeping a small species, they can probably stay in the test tube for a few more months until the population grows. If you're keeping a larger species, or a queen that has produced a lot of workers, you can always move them into a small setup, such as a whitong or acrylic nest, or even a natural setup. changing a test tube or moving to a new setup. When keeping ants in test tubes, sometimes the cotton will go mouldy or water will dry up. If this happens, there's a very simple way of getting a queen or colony to move. Create a new test tube with fresh water, then place both ends together. I used a small amount of blue tack to keep the tubes in place. You can just use normal light or a lamp and shine it on the old tube, then place a covering on the new one so that the queen will move to the dark area. Now, one thing you have to know about ant keeping, it requires a lot of patience, so don't give up. Eventually you'll see your first workers and you can watch your queen begin her own empire. This was how to raise a queen ant in a test tube setup. So I decided to try something different, a new setup for raising some of my queen ants. This is the glass bottle setup. These small bottles are the perfect size for a small species of ant. The bottle is small enough that there isn't too much space. The top has a cork which can lightly be pushed down so that the queen can still breathe. I decided to add some sand to the bottles. I then added a few drops of water to create humidity inside. Now, in my opinion, I really like this setup. It looks pretty cool and feels more natural. Here are 3 queens which have been introduced to the new founding setup. The first is Fidoli Faladula with some brood. She slowly started digging, and before I knew it, she dug herself a little tunnel and moved her brood to the bottom. The second was Manica rubida, the large European fire ant, who has some larvae. She very quickly started digging, and in no time the entire bottle was full of sand. She seems much happier in this setup. The last is my Lasius Niger queen, who has a ton of brood, and her first workers will be with us very shortly. She decided not to dig, which is great for me, because I get to see her and her first workers clearly. Let me know what you guys thought about this new setup in the comments below, and also your opinions on this video. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Coming up next week, 15 facts about the pavement ant. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you guys in my next video.